My name is Ben, and welcome to episode 2 of the Coach Dad Podcast.
Well done, Austin.
So welcome to the second instalment of the Coach Dad Podcast. In the last episode, I left it on finding a new club for my oldest lad, Caleb, after his journey had come to an end with his very first club. And on this episode, I'm going to take a deep dive into my youngest lad, Austin, at the same club and where it all went wrong. But before we get into that, a little look at this week's football within my household and both my lads. They both managed to play games this weekend. The oldest lad, Caleb, he played in a quarter-final game of a League Cup. And unfortunately, they lost and they went down quite heavily to a very good team. They lost, I think it was maybe 8 or 9-1 in the end. Never really got going. Again, they had a very slim squad, missing one or two key players, and they just never got going. Football was not great, to be fair. They can play some good stuff, they can battle hard, but they just really didn't do neither this week. So unfortunately, he came away with the loss. And they are now out of the cup, which he's pretty gutted about because he has these dreams and plays a bit too much sort of FIFA or FC 24, whatever it's called now. And he has these dreams of winning cups and stuff like that. But a way off, got to put in better performances. And again, relayed that to him when he came off, sort of point out one or two things within his game that perhaps he could improve on. One being throw-ins, struggles with that. But the other one was just keeping an eye on sort of, he was playing right back, so obviously they have offsides this year where they didn't at any point previously. So it's just about sort of keeping an eye on the line of his defenders and stuff like that. Again, I don't tell him none of the stuff in the game. I let the managers manage because I'm a coach. That's one of the worst things that can happen when you're a coach, is that you have a parent on the other side trying to coach, and it happens all the time, week in, week out. Luckily, I don't really have that with my team at all, really. I give all the lads instructions of some sort, and it's just not great if someone else is trying to give them a mixed message, a different set of instructions, like, get forward, get a goal, get in the box, where I may not want them to do that. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the group. I may give someone an instruction of, I just want you to kick the ball out. I may just want you to get your head up and pass. I need you to bomb forward. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. But yeah, so I never coach on the sidelines as a parent. That's one thing, again, I've sort of, being a coach, I wouldn't do, because I don't want that to happen to me either. So always in the car on the way home, just trying to give him tidbits and little bits of improvement in his game. And yeah, just confidence, really, at that age. Like, they played this team earlier in the season in the league, and it was a draw or a tight affair. It just didn't have the sort of, I don't know, just didn't have the fight in them this time, perhaps. I don't know. But again, they're only sort of 11 or 12, though, so it's all a learning curve, and they get to go again next week in the league. So they're out of all the cup competitions. The county cup, they're out of. The league cup, they're now out of. So yeah, just got to concentrate on sort of consolidating themselves sort of as a mid-table team in the top league in the area. So, I mean, it's all good fun. So, disappointed, but away we go. And then my team, my little team of ballers that I coach. Well, where do I start? Again, we had a bit of a rotten week ourselves this week, to be fair. Another negative result. I was plagued by sickness again. I had all 10 confirmed. And like I said, I've never had 10 people turn up for a game for me since the start of the season. 10 people signed up, 10 spaces, 10 kits. Never seen them all. Not managed to be able to get a team photo with everyone, but it's just how it goes. And again, it happened this week. I had a message the day before, 1 on the morning of, I had a call of saying he's woke up, he's coughing away. There's a lot of bugs going around at the minute. So yeah, I was left with from 10 to 6, I think I had in the end, or 7. And then went into the game, and I don't know what it was. We played a team who were a fairly good team, good little team. I just don't think there was much in it. It was just they were more switched on than us. my little team we just never really got going. We didn't even score a goal this week. Like, that's one thing that is, we've sort of grown and grown. We went from scoring no goals in the first couple of games to grabbing one, and we regularly get 3 or 4 now. Just sort of defensively, sometimes we're a little bit frail. These are all new boys to football, but yeah, unfortunately, another negative result. But we now have 3 games left of this season. That takes us up to the end of the month. And then I think we've got a break at Easter, and then we're into maybe a mini league where they're going to put all the teams, pair them up with similar ability teams essentially, so you get more of a chance now. I'm hoping to hopefully grab a win, before the season's out. It's the dream. It's what we want. So yeah, hopefully it's coming. So, but if not, we keep going. We go in. We had a training session this week. Actually, a fantastic training session, to be fair. It's hard as I'm predominantly by myself. I'm a lone coach. That is hard work when you're trying to control 11 or 12 little boys and it only takes 1 or 2 to turn 3 or 4, if you know what I'm saying. And I know a lot of people out there, coaches who are listening to this, they will probably have similar experience where, keeping control of a session is paramount, and it's hard. But if you put the effort in, you learn little ways to deal with certain behaviour issues with certain boys, because it maybe just certain children. I follow a coach on TikTok, and he says the best way is just you speak to the ones that are listening, and then when you start implementing, you start playing a game or doing a drill, the ones who don't listen obviously have not listened, so they don't understand. So you sort of take them aside and say, look, this is the outcome of your behaviour essentially, is you were not listening, and come on, let's get involved. We're a team essentially, which is a good way to approach it. I sort of do a similar thing. I try and I gather everyone together, give them instruction, and I know who's not listening. And then when it comes to the drill, it's like, well, show me what you're doing then, and they can't. So you have to sort of re-talk them through it. But again, these are only little boys. They're sort of 7 or 8 years old, so they're all learning. We're all learning together. So I don't bear any ill will against anybody, whereas I know it can be a stressful situation where if you were not of the right mind of developing and stuff like that, you would take it as I can't deal with this. I see online coaches all the time sort of asking for advice, and should they kick them out, and should they bring up the terms, talk to parents, should they introduce card systems and that. And I'm just of the sort of the mindset and the thought of I'll give the instructions. Those who listen, they'll just get on and do it. The ones who don't, they'll stand and look about, and it's then when you can sort of say, look, this is why you should be listening, and hopefully they then get it and go about it. And I remember doing a session fairly early on, one of my first sessions, when I had my leg in plaster. I'll get into that again. I say I'll get into that a lot, but actually this is playing to the actual story of this podcast, moving to a new team, and I'll get into how I sort of ended up in a cast. But I was in a cast, and I was trying to control. It was only 6 or 7 then, and I was thinking, what am I doing? This is nuts. I don't know if I can do this. But 2-3 sessions later, you get to know the boys, you get to know what they're all about. They're young, they've got to grow up, and they'll find out as time goes on that you do need to listen. Listening is a big part of football and communication, so it's all about using some key skills there. So yeah, not a great week in the household for football. Couple of negative results, not much positive as in terms of any personal accolades either. Although my little lad Austin, for his under-7s, he was away. I may have mentioned that he was not very well last week, but this week he was back with us, and he's buoyed on from his couple of goals a couple of weeks ago in his man of match performance, and he was away with it again. He nearly bagged us a couple of goals. Yeah, so this week we look to go again. My oldest lad's got an away game against another really good team. I think they're 2nd or 3rd in the league, so that should be a good battle. And again, I think he knows quite a few lads from his old school that he's playing against. So yeah, that should be a good game. That's on the Sunday, and then on Saturday I travel away with my bunch to a team where we actually scored 3 goals against earlier in the season. It still went down to a negative result, but that was one of those, the score seems high, but for a 5v5 on a small pitch, it was a really close competitive game. So these are ones where you can sort of, it's a yardstick, so you know where you were back then. So hopefully this week we can see where we are now, and hopefully we've moved forward. But saying that, other teams move forward as well. They don't stand still, and they grow. They get new players. They get better as time goes on as well. So that's what we're in it for. So hopefully we get a good game. We might have a positive in the household at the weekend, but we will see. So that's it for the topical news of this week. I've ran on a little bit there and dived in and out of a few things. But back to the story of my little lad, Austin, and how he had a year in an under-7s team and how that all came crashing to an end, and then how he ended up joining another new team. That new team needed coaches, and that's how I became his coach dad. So back to the start of the 2022-23 season, my little lad Austin joined up with 7 or 8 other lads, and they started to prepare for the season ahead. They played a load of friendlies, and they did all right. They struggled a little bit. You can see a lot of the boys, 2 or 3 of them were pretty raw, and 4 or 5 of them were really good little players, and they had some real good talent in them. They just needed to be coached right. And this is where the first few cracks started to appear early on within this football club. So we got about a week away from the start of the season. We were asked to sign up, come along, sign up, get your little card for the clubhouse, little pack and all the rest of it, which we did. We come along, we signed up, we paid our fee. I can't remember what the fee was. It was either 50 or something like that. We paid the money, and then on the next training session, the last one before the very first game of the season, the coach came over to 3 sets of parents and pulled them aside, me inclusive in that, and he said, look, I'm only going to take 6 players to a game, and I've got my 5 here, you 3 here, you can still do your little kicker session on a Saturday, and then every sort of 1 in 3 weeks, I'll take one of your boys along and they can go to games and they can play. Well, I'm not a very reactionary person. I sort of bit my tongue, and like I say, I was new to sort of the world of youth football and the club and all the rest of it. I come away thinking from that training session, I'm not sure on this, and I've got this nice gleaming welcome pack from the club that says all inclusive football this and youth, and we're pushing this and we're pushing that. Yeah, I've just been told by a coach that we're not going to turn up for games. I felt a little bit hoodwinked that we just paid the signing on fees a few days earlier, and then we're told, look, you've paid that, that's fair enough, but you won't get games. So I had a little word with the coach of my oldest boy's team, who obviously was in the club, and let him know the situation. And he could not believe what was said to us, essentially. And he said, I need to go to, higher up in the club, because that shouldn't be happening. Me, as a parent at the time, I wasn't sure if this was a club ethos or how teams, operated independently within the club. So I'm not sure if head of youth welfare officers were aware that this was taking place. I just assumed it was a norm. But the coach of my oldest boy Caleb's team said, no way, that's not on. You need to talk to somebody and get that rectified. So that night I went home and I put together a little bit of it was either an email or a text message to the head of youth or the welfare officer, and said, look, I feel I've been hoodwinked here. I've just paid this money to sign up to play football. I'm reading your lovely little pack that says all inclusive youth football, we push youth, and then to turn up and say we're not going to be able to play because of ability. And I'm like, if you're putting barriers up for 6 and 7 year olds already that they can't get game time, then is this the right club for us? I then had 1 or 2 people, like the welfare officer and the head of youth, literally ring me within minutes, and half an hour, 45-minute conversations about how this coach has gone a bit rogue with this. This is not how the club sees things. They have 10 little kits, they have 10 spaces, they want to fill those spaces and they want kids playing football. That's the ethos. So they will talk to the coach. So they talked to the coach, and he put an apology out in the group and said, look, I'm sorry, that's the competitive nature in me. I just wanted to win games, and I hadn't really thought about it like that. So a little bit about the coach. He wasn't like, say myself, a coach dad. He didn't have a connection to any of the players within the team. He was solely just a coach because he had badges, and he was at one point within the club a coach. So yeah, he put that out there, and it created a little bit of tension, not going to lie. And then he decided within the week to step away and, apologise and wished everyone well. Or looking back, it was the best thing for everybody. That allowed two coaches to step in. They had boys in the team, but they also had played for this club at some point and, were still active within the football club, either on a vets team or something like that, or turned out for the first team at some point. And they were really good, and they had the right idea. So then it opened up a bit. It all settled down. There was then sort of, 8 or 9 lads. They all had a fantastic season. My little lad got plenty of game time in. The team itself went on a great run in the County Cup. They got all the way to the quarters or the semi-final. And then they did come up against a really good, well-drilled team from Norwich. That's one thing you notice when you're in one city, 1 or 2 big towns in a county, and you're out in the sticks like us. You can get a collection of good players in a little town. But when you come up against a big team from a city or a town, there's levels in it essentially. So, but yeah, they got all the way. They did really well. Didn't shame themselves, and then they did take a bit of a hammering, and but they did really well. And then my boy Austin was doing really well. He also managed to grab his first goal and goals in a game, maybe in early January. Again, much like his brother, took ages, but like his brother, he got his first one, and the second one came along in the same game not long after. And that is the clip you can hear at the very beginning over the music intro. That's him scoring his very first goal, and sort of you can hear that all the parents were made up for him essentially. When he scored that goal, he did a knee slide and he started crying, so it's sort of happy cry as he calls it. That's what it meant to him. So that was fantastic. And yeah, as the season went on, the coaches were really good with everybody. They were fantastic at sessions. They gave everyone fair game time. Again, I had no real issues, and yeah, it just went along nicely. And then we went away for summer. Essentially, got to the end of the season, and then had a bit of a break. We had then a load of friendlies lined up and a few tournaments. But when we came back for pre-season training, I'll call it, again there was another sort of funny vibe again, and I think there ended up about 16 or 17 kids I counted on the very first session. The coach of the team, he then pulled the parents aside and he said, look, I have got 10 spaces, it's 5 aside, you double it, you got 10. Out of this, the lads out there at the minute doing training, I can only take 10 of them to games. Now, you can sort of stick about and train and I'll get friendlies, but I will pick the best 10 players. Now, I knew that this might be the end of the road for us at this club, and I'm a little bit gutted. Like I said, we were there from the inception, from the start of this team. We were loyal. We went all over a county, and I mean we went all over a county, and we turned up away at 9:30 with an hour's drive before, when there was only 5 players, and I think loyalty was going to count for nothing essentially. And with how my oldest boy's team ended, with the vibes I was getting here, I was just, again, it might not be the coaches. I just think as an ethos, the club were so geared up with their first team football that the youth team, there was no real structure, and things like this got lost. So, loyalty, picking the best players, all of it, it was just not very, it just didn't come across very nice it just didn't come across good to me. So I knew coming out of that meeting that my lad was likely not going to be selected for this, the squad. So I was starting to think that I'm going to have to find him a new club, basically, because he wants to play football. He loves playing football. He made all these friends at this new club, but just wasn't getting the vibe of this was where we needed to be. So I'll be honest, I was quite disappointed because, as I said in the previous podcast, I tried to be a coach for my oldest boy within this club. I had already done some of the FA stuff, like, to get you started, the playmakers, the health and safety. The club said they'd put me through my badges and already gave me a sort of start date, and I sort of knocked it back. I said, look, if I'm not going to be here as a coach, there's no point in me starting doing the badges. So the head of youth and people within the club knew that I wanted to be a coach, and I was going to coach an under-12s team for next season. There were 17 little boys out there playing football, training, yet we've got a coach here telling us parents that there is only 10 places. The other 7 can train, and he'll try to get a friendly game for them in the week or whenever. And I'm thinking, so that's enough. You could divvy this up, 8 and 9. Ask me to be a coach because I want to be a coach, and I can coach half of them, but it was never a thought. So, this is what I'm on about, sort of just the total lack of any sort of structure or concept or communication behind the scenes with all the various clubs. It's just non-existent from what I can see, and it's certainly what I felt like, because like I say, I dipped my toe in behind the scenes a little bit. From all the vibes I was getting, we had a fight and battle just to get my lad to play football, and everything was in place. Yeah, you want a strong team. You could have a strong first team. I mean, I've got a fairly weak team now, so yeah, he wanted to pick the best 10 players, but the ones that were left, I would have gladly coached them. But I didn't suggest it, because I just thought, I'm not suggesting it, because if they can't put the bits of the puzzle together, then what's the point, So what I did was I informed them that, yeah, we're not going to, after that session, I actually sent the chap a message, said, look, we're not going to stick about, we're going to look for pastures new, essentially, because we know we're not going to be selected. And that was all amicable anyway. I said sort of our goodbyes, gave the kit back, and where I am in Marham, there's a club literally on my doorstep, a mile away. It's a village youth set up, and again, I didn't realise how big it was until I'm in it. It's a massive youth setup, essentially. I just assumed it was a small village team, but no, it's quite a big setup. Got to play over 2 villages. We've got some pictures at Marham and down at Sholdham. I'll name the club Sholdham. So what happened in the meantime before us actually joining and leaving the old club, I attempted to play football myself as a overweight 39-year-old trying to get fit, not played sort of competitive football or any football in a good 4 or 5 years. I went and had a game with a couple of mates. I'd done one session, was really feeling it. Went for the second game a week later, and I snapped my Achilles. So that sort of put a bit of a dampener on things. That put an end to my football career. So that ended up being a minimum of 8 weeks in a cast, then a boot thereafter. So this happened in early June. So in this meantime, I'd signed my boy up to the new club, Sholdham. I got chucked in a band group. I know people use different things, WhatsApp or Spond. There's various alternatives. And a similar thing happened in there, but it was much more pleasant. So the coach at the time, there was only one under-7s team. Obviously, this was now turned into an under-8s. He had 20 kids there, and he was like, look, I've got 20 kids here. And so this was all within the band group. It was set up properly. You got the welfare officer, you got all different people in there. And he said, look, I've got 20 kids here. Is there anyone else who's willing to step up? We'll help out. The club welfare officer was in there. They said, we'll help out. We'll give you everything you need. We'll help you out. But is there a parent in there who's willing to step up? And I was like, do I put my name forward? I was comfortable at the old club because I knew people, I knew the surroundings, whereas I've only been in this band group a week or so, and someone was asking for volunteers. So I was like, I'll do it on the proviso I'm going to need some help early on because my leg is in plaster. I've snapped my Achilles. So, we got him signed up. They had a bit of a summer break, actually. It was quite nice. So it gave me sort of July and then August. And then as it panned out, my very first session was the day I had my cast off and I had a boot on, so I could weight bearing. But yeah, that got me going. So I then went down and done all my DBS and all the rest of it and signed all the forms, got assigned my sort of players, made my own band group, and away we went. I then started looking at sessions and what am I going to do. But so I had sort of 2 or 3 weeks to contemplate, what am I going to do? That sort of realisation of saying yes, it's right playing Championship Manager, but saying yes and then it dawning on you that you're now going to have to sort of start your coaching, you're going to have to start your badges, you're going to have to start lesson planning. Yes, I played football, I know lots about football, I watch football religiously at weekends and through the week, and I've gone around the country watching my team, and I've just been football mad since way back when. But when the realisation comes that you're going to have to figure out coaching a bunch of energetic 7 and 8 year olds, the realisation hits. And then the handicap of also not having 2 legs was also a bit of a nightmare, but it all came together in the end. So yeah, that was sort of essentially how I ended up becoming coach dad. I went from parent, went on a bit of a rough journey with both my lads at this club, And then I couldn't say no, really. So there it was. And before you know it, it was the end of August. Cast was off, boot was off, first game in the sun, and yeah, that was it really. We went from there. But looking back on my time as a parent with my boys at the old club, I had this mentality of my coaching ethos was going to be, I am not going to say no to anybody. I'm not going to sort of have a best this and a best that. I'm going to allow everybody to train and grow. Not that the other coaches didn't. I wanted to be fair for everybody, and I felt like because of the low ability of my lad, he didn't get as much game time, but he got his fair share of game time. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he sat on the bench for half a game or 3/4 of a game. He didn't. He, like I said, we turned up and there was only 5 or 6 players sometimes, so he got a good run out. But when it mattered, when it was the cup final game, the quarterfinals or semi-finals of the cup and that, he sat on the bench predominantly most of the games. And again, that's the balancing act that you play when you've got a good team, I suppose, and you want to win something. Yeah, so I sort of made a few promises to myself that from my experience at the old club, that I was going to be transparent with everybody. I was going to overload band groups with all the information about how it is with kickoff times, how I divvy up time, how I'm going to be fair. Any information I get about anything, I try being upfront, whether it's games are on a knife edge if they're going to go. I try and feed them the information as quick as possible, because I've been a parent where you've been hanging, and there's nothing worse than sort of being left at the last minute and then sort of ruining a day when you could be doing something else. We sort of live and breathe for the football on a Saturday, don't get me wrong, but when it's sort of been -4 all week or whatever overnight, and then you come sort of look at a weather forecast for the Saturday and it's still, the temperature's not getting above 1 or 2, so the ground's not going to thaw out yet, they still desperately hold on to the last to give it a last minute half an hour pitch inspection. I'm like, it's never in a month of Sundays, it's never going to go ahead. So I like to be informative, I like to be upfront with everybody, I have good communication, I try and build an atmosphere that will allow everybody to sort of grow. And yeah, communication is key really, that's probably the main thing. And I don't think I've had any negativity from any of my set of parents. They've been great, to be fair, allow me to sort of do what I do. And I think I was fairly honest at the start of the season. I know from looking about, reading online, that there are teams who are new teams, that they can go 2 or 3 years without winning a game. I've very much got the vibe that that could be us, but I'm there to try and make that not happen, essentially. But again, it's non-competitive football, so it doesn't really matter. And in the end, it's just to put them in stead for further on in life. So hopefully we'll get there with it. But yeah, so that's my main lesson sort of coming out of that club. Now, both my lads are in new clubs, and it does feel like the clubs that they're in, they're going to end up staying for a while. Like, I already know my little lad, Austin's going to be there, because I'm committed to the project of this over the next coming seasons, 2, 3, 4 seasons, whatever it may be. I want to do it long term, and I want to, develop a side. I've already got my 10. I've already got a couple of extra training with me, with a view of joining. They're train only at the minute, but obviously I can't sign extra players. But again, this was part of me being upfront with these new people who've just joined in the last 2 or 3 weeks, saying, look, we've only got 3 games left of our current season. We're going to do sort of some friendly tournaments, I believe, or friendly little structured games come April. And if I can get you involved, I will. I can't sign anybody extra, but I want you. I'm going to need extra players for next season. As soon as the season's end, I'm going to do 7v7 games, so I'm going to need all the extra players I'm going to get. I'm going to try and keep a squad of sort of 11 or 12, which I have now at the minute. And again, the new boys who joined, again, ability, they're not well beaters. They've only just found football now, and they come. I've thrown them in a session. I've made it fun for them, and they want to come back. So I'm hoping to sort of build and grow it. And like I say, that's the way I think is the best way of approaching it. Is essentially sort of saying how it is, like being open, saying, look, I haven't got the space just right now, but we're only a few weeks away, a month or so from them being able to play, essentially. So stick with us, get involved at the training sessions, and then we'll have a kit on them and have them chasing that ball and hopefully winning some games for me in no time. But yeah, so much in there to sort of reflect on and look at, and how things are within grassroots football clubs, the way they work, the way the youth side of it is ignored or the dots are not connected. I've talked to welfare officers. The welfare officers at the last club were absolutely fantastic. Like, even though the welfare officer was great, but perhaps the head of youth maybe could have linked it up a little better. I don't know, but it is what it is. Like, this was a big sort of football club, as in the local area. They're in the lower regions of the football pyramid. They have a budget for a first team. I think that's, it's all geared up for the first team essentially. So it does feel like the youth side is perhaps neglected a little bit, but I've got no bad words for anybody really. I just obviously I take out of it, and you learn from it essentially, and you'll implement that in. I'm hopefully going to implement that into my own sort of football philosophy moving forward. So that's going to bring an end to the second episode of the Coach Dad podcast. On the next episode, I hope to sort of look back at some of those early days of me being a manager and get into some of the stories of training and setting up training sessions and the very first game of the season. But for now, thanks for listening, and I'll see you again.